The Great Archive of Orvos was the largest library in the known universe. It floated in space like a small moon, filled with the knowledge of 400 different species. Millions of data files sat in its deep vaults, waiting to be found. Some files were so old that no one remembered putting them there. Vecca was a quiet archivist who worked in the deepest level of the archive. She was an Arvani, a tall and pale creature with 4 eyes and long fingers made for delicate work. Her job was simple. She found broken files and fixed them. Most of the time, she found boring things. Old trade records, dead languages, star maps of systems that no longer existed. But on this day, Vecca found something different. The file was buried under layers of corrupted data. It was so old that the archive systems could not even guess its age. The only marking on it was a set of coordinates. Vecca checked the coordinates and found that they pointed to a small blue planet on the outer edge of the galaxy. A planet called Earth. Vecca knew about Earth. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Earth now. The humans had joined the Galactic Council only 12 years ago. They were a young species, strange and curious. They smiled too much. They asked too many questions. They seemed harmless. Vecca spent 3 months fixing the broken file. She worked alone, late into the night cycles, pulling fragments of data together like pieces of a puzzle. She did not know what she would find. She only knew that something this old and this hidden had to be important. When the file finally opened, Vecca watched in silence. The footage was dark and grainy. It showed a world covered in green forests and blue oceans. Earth, she realized. But this was Earth from a very long time ago. Thousands of years, maybe more. Then she saw them. The shepherds. Vecca's 4 eyes went wide. She stopped breathing. Every Ovani child knew about the shepherds. They were the creators of life. They were the shapers of stars. They were gods. The Orvani had prayed to them for 10,000 years. Every species in the galaxy owed its existence to the shepherds. In the footage, a shepherd stood on a mountain. It was enormous, taller than any building Vecca had ever seen. Its body was made of light and shadow. Its eyes burned like small suns. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And surrounding it were humans. Vecca expected the humans to kneel. She expected them to pray, to offer gifts, to beg for mercy. That was what every species did when they met the shepherds. That was the natural order of things. But the humans did not kneel. They attacked. Vecca watched as primitive humans threw spears at the shepherd. They shot arrows. They threw burning torches. The shepherd swatted them away like insects, killing dozens with a single movement. But more humans came. And more. They climbed the mountain like ants, screaming and fighting and dying. The footage changed. Now it showed a different time, a different place. Humans stood on boats in a great ocean. Before them rose another shepherd, this one emerging from the water like a living storm. The Morath species called this being the first light. They had built their entire civilization around worshipping it. The humans fired cannons at it. They threw harpoons. They sailed their boats directly into its body and set themselves on fire. The first light fell. Vecca watched it collapse into the ocean, its divine light flickering and dying. The humans cheered. They celebrated. They danced on their boats as the corpse of a god sank beneath the waves. More footage. More battles. More dead shepherds. Vecca saw humans pull down a shepherd with ropes and chains. She saw them poison another with some kind of smoke. She saw them dig pits and traps. She saw them fight with sticks, with stones, with fire, with metal weapons that grew more advanced as the years passed. And the shepherds kept dying. The final piece of footage showed a great battlefield. Thousands of humans stood together, from different tribes, different lands, different colors. They faced the last shepherd, a being so massive that it blocked out the sun. This was the one the humans had called the Hollow King in their oldest stories. The battle lasted for what seemed like days. Humans died by the thousands. But they did not stop. They did not run. They fought until the Hollow King fell, its body crashing into the earth like a fallen star. Then there was silence. Vecca sat alone in the dark archive, her hands shaking. She did not understand what she had just seen. It was impossible. The shepherds were immortal. The shepherds were divine. The shepherds could not be killed, but the footage did not lie. The humans had killed them. All of them. With rocks and fire and simple determination. They had looked at gods and decided that gods could bleed. VKKA sent the files to High Elder Tarim immediately. Her message was short. You need to see this. 3 hours later, Tarim sat alone in his private chamber, watching the same footage. He was old, even for an Arvani. He had served the council for 200 years. He had seen wars and plagues and the rise and fall of empires. Nothing had ever scared him, but now his hands were shaking too. His species had prayed to the shepherds since before they had a written language. They had built temples. They had offered sacrifices. They had believed with every part of their being that the shepherds were eternal. And the humans had killed them with spears. Tarim turned off the footage and sat in the darkness for a long time. Finally, he spoke to himself, his voice barely a whisper. What are these creatures? He did not have an answer, but he knew that the galaxy needed one, and he knew that the humans would have to provide it. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to hear the truth. Tay was eating his breakfast when the message arrived. He was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, a job that usually involved boring meetings and polite conversations. He had held this position for 6 years. In all that time, he had never received an urgent summons. Until now. The message was simple. Report to the council chambers immediately. Bring a translator. Tay put down his food and called Hannah. She was the best translator on his team, a young woman who could speak 15 alien languages without electronic help. She arrived at his office within minutes, looking worried. What is happening? She asked. I do not know, Tay admitted. But it cannot be good. They walked together through Galactic Station Prime, the massive space station that served as the center of galactic government. The hallways were strangely empty. Usually, thousands of aliens moved through these corridors at all hours. Today, there was no one. When they reached the council chambers, Tay understood why. Every species in the galaxy was already inside. The chamber was enormous, large enough to hold representatives from all 400 member species. Tay had been here many times before. He had seen it busy and crowded, but he had never seen it like this. Every seat was filled. Aliens of all shapes and sizes sat in perfect silence, their eyes fixed on the human pair as they entered. Tay felt the weight of their stares. Some looked scared. Some looked angry. Some had expressions he could not read at all. He walked to the human section and took his seat, with Hannah beside him. High Elder Tarim stood at the center of the chamber. He was old and tired, and his 4 eyes held a sadness that Tay had never seen before. Thank you all for coming, Tarim said. His voice echoed through the vast space. I have called this emergency session because of a discovery that changes everything we know about the galaxy. He pressed a button, and a massive screen lit up behind him. The footage began to play. Tay watched in confusion at first. He saw images of Earth, but from a very long time ago. Ancient forests, primitive villages, people in animal skins carrying wooden weapons. Then he saw the giants, massive beings made of light and shadow, towering over mountains and seas. They were beautiful and terrifying. Tay did not recognize them. But the gasps from the alien delegates told him everything he needed to know. These were the shepherds, the gods that every species in the galaxy worshipped. And in the footage, humans were killing them. Tay watched his ancestors throw themselves at these divine beings with nothing but rocks and spears. He watched them die by the hundreds, the thousands. But they kept coming. They never stopped. They fought like animals, like demons, like creatures who had nothing to lose. And somehow, impossibly, they won. The footage showed a shepherd falling into the ocean, another collapsing on a mountainside, another being pulled down by ropes and chains while humans cheered. When the footage ended, the chamber was silent. Then the screaming started. Aliens wept. Some collapsed from their seats. Others shouted in languages Tay did not understand. The Morith ambassador, a large aquatic creature named Sella, was crying openly. Her species had built their entire civilization around worshipping one of the beings in that footage. Tarim raised his hands for silence. It took a long time for the chamber to calm down. "Ambassador Tay," Tarim said, turning to face him. His voice was steady, but his eyes were burning. "Did humanity kill our gods?" Every eye in the chamber turned to Tay. He felt the pressure crushing him. He looked at the frozen image on the screen, at the human warriors standing over the body of a fallen shepherd. He recognized the scene, not from any archive or database, but from the stories his grandmother had told him as a child. Tales of giants and monsters. Tales of heroes who slayed dragons and defeated demons. He had always thought they were just stories. Hannah leaned close to him. "Tay," she whispered, "those are our legends, our mythology, our ancient wars against monsters." Tay nodded slowly. He stood up and faced the council. "We did not know they were your gods," he said. His voice was calm, but inside he was shaking. "We did not know anyone worshipped them. To us, they were just threats." "Threats?" Sella screamed. "The first light gave my people life. She was our mother, our creator." "To you, perhaps," Tay said. "To us, she was a monster that demanded our children as sacrifices. We had a choice. We could serve, or we could fight." He paused, looking around the chamber. Humanity chose to fight. The chamber exploded again. Some delegates demanded that humans be expelled from the council. Others called for war. A few sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were hearing. In the shadows at the back of the chamber, a tall alien stood watching. His name was Bren, and he was the fleet commander of the United Species military. He had spent his entire career protecting the galaxy from external threats. Now he wondered if the greatest threat was already inside. He pulled out his communication device and sent a message to his fleet. "Prepare defensive positions around human space. Classification: existential unknown." The message sent, he continued to watch as the chamber descended into chaos. Tay remained standing, his face calm. Hannah translated the shouting around them, but Tay was not really listening. He was thinking about his ancestors. Simple people with simple tools, facing beings that could destroy mountains with a thought. They should have died. They should have submitted. Every other species in the galaxy had. But humans did not kneel. Tay did not know if that was a blessing or a curse. He only knew that the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The question was whether they would be seen as heroes or monsters. And right now, looking at the fear and hatred in the eyes around him, Tay was not sure of the answer. The council gave humanity 7 days to explain. If they could not provide answers, they would be expelled from the galactic community. Their ships would be banned. Their people would be isolated. They would be alone again. Tay worked without sleep. He sent urgent messages to Earth, asking for experts who could help him explain what had happened. 2 people answered his call. The first was Yuna, a military historian who had spent her life studying humanity's oldest wars. She was 41 years old, with tired eyes and a sharp mind. She arrived on Galactic Station Prime, carrying boxes of ancient records. The second was Ho, a former general who was now 58 and retired. He had white hair and a scarred face from old battles. He walked slowly, but his eyes were still fierce. He had studied the legends his whole life, never knowing they were real. Together, the three of them prepared humanity's defense. On the seventh day, the council gathered again. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to hear what the humans would say. Una stood at the center of the chamber, a small human woman surrounded by giants. She was scared, but she did not show it. She pressed a button, and images appeared on the great screen behind her. "Let me tell you about Earth," she began. Her voice was steady. For most of our history, our world was not ours. We shared it with beings far more powerful than us. Beings that could crush mountains and drain oceans. Beings that demanded worship. The screen showed ancient paintings from caves. Stick figures of humans running from massive shadows. Bodies piled high as offerings. They came in many forms, Una continued. Some looked like serpents. Some looked like giants. Some were made of pure light. Every human culture has stories about them. We called them gods, demons, titans, monsters. We did not know that other species worshipped them. We only knew that they ruled us. She showed more images. Clay tablets covered in strange writing. Carvings on temple walls. Old books with faded pages. They demanded blood, Una said. Our children. Our strongest warriors. Our most beautiful daughters. We were their cattle. Or we were their cattle. Their toys. They played with us for their amusement. The chamber was silent. Even the species who had been calling for humanity's destruction were quiet now. Some humans accepted this, Una admitted. Some built temples and prayed for mercy. But others refused. They looked at these beings and asked a simple question. Can they bleed? General Ho stepped forward. His old soldier's body was stiff, but his voice was strong. The answer was yes, he said. It took us thousands of years to learn how. We lost millions, maybe billions. Our history books call them wars, but they were more like extinctions. Entire cities wiped out. Whole civilizations destroyed. He pressed a button and the screen showed a timeline. Points marked across thousands of years, each one representing a battle against a shepherd. But we learned, Ho said. We learned that fire hurt them. We learned that certain metals made them weak. We learned that they needed worship to stay strong. So we stopped worshiping. We stopped offering sacrifices. And when they came to punish us, we fought back. He showed footage of ancient battles. Humans with torches surrounding a fallen giant. Boats firing primitive cannons at a creature rising from the sea. Armies marching with weapons made of a strange dark metal. The final war happened about 4,000 years ago, Ho said. We called it the Silence. Every human tribe on Earth united for the first time. People who had been enemies for generations fought side by side. We faced the last of the great beings, the one we called the Hollow King. The screen showed the final battle. Thousands of humans charging across a dark field. A being of impossible size rising before them. Bodies falling like rain. We lost half our population, Ho said quietly. Entire cultures disappeared. Knowledge was lost that we have never recovered. But when it was over, the Hollow King was dead. And we were free. He turned off the screen and faced the council. We did not know you worshipped them, he said. We did not know they had created life elsewhere in the galaxy. To us, they were just monsters that needed to be destroyed. We were fighting for survival. Nothing more. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Sela, the Morith ambassador, rose from her seat. Her aquatic body was trembling. "You killed the First Light with spears?" she asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yuna answered, "With anything we had." Sela sat down slowly, as if her legs could no longer hold her. Other delegates were looking at the humans differently now. Not with hatred. With something else, fear, and perhaps a little awe. Elder Tarim finally spoke. His voice was heavy with centuries of belief now shattered. "You fought gods," he said. "And you won. We survived," Tay corrected. He had been silent until now, watching his people tell humanity's darkest story. "That is all we have ever done. We survive." Tarim looked at the human ambassador for a long moment. He thought about his own species, who had prayed to the shepherds for 10,000 years. They had never questioned, never resisted, never even thought it was possible. And then there were humans. A small species on a small planet, who had looked at immortal beings and decided to fight anyway. Tarim did not know if that made them brave or insane. Perhaps both. "The council will deliberate," he announced. "Return in 3 days for our decision." As the humans left the chamber, Tarim sat alone in his seat. He was beginning to understand something terrible. Humanity had not risen to the stars through the grace of the shepherds. They had clawed their way up over the corpses of Godstad, and if they could do that, what else were they capable of? The galaxy broke apart within days. The footage spread across every network, every world, every colony. Billions of beings watched humans kill their gods. And every one of them had a reaction. Some species celebrated. The Veccan Liberation Front, a small group that had always questioned the shepherds, called humans the Unchained Ones. They sent messages of support and asked for alliances. Other small species, those who had suffered under divine rule, sent delegations to Earth asking for protection, but many more reacted with fury. The Morith Collective declared humanity godslayers and cut all communication. 3 species demanded that humans be expelled immediately. 12 religious orders from different worlds joined together and called for what they named a holy cleansing of Earth. On Galactic Station Prime, riots broke out. Followers of different shepherds attacked each other, blaming different human actions for their loss. Commander Bren deployed security forces, but there were not enough of them. The violence spread to other stations, other worlds. Tay worked without rest. He gave speech after speech, trying to calm the galaxy. "We are not your enemies," he said in a broadcast that reached every corner of known space. "We did not know what we were doing. We were simply trying to survive. Please, let us work together." But the footage kept spreading. Humans dragging divine bodies through mud. Humans dancing around the corpses of eternal beings. Humans winning wars that should have been impossible. Some saw monsters. Others saw hope. On Earth, panic was growing. People watched the news and saw alien fleets moving toward their solar system. Commander Bren had positioned his ships in a defensive line around human space. He said it was for observation. Everyone knew it was for something else. Hannah worked day and night establishing communication with friendly species. There were more than she expected. Small worlds that had lived in fear of the shepherds for thousands of years. Species who had been forced to sacrifice their children just like humans had. They reached out in secret, afraid to show support publicly. "There are more of us than you know," one message said. "We never had the courage to fight. But maybe now we can." Meanwhile, in his private office, General Ho received a message that changed everything. It came from an unknown source, encrypted with technology that Ho did not recognize. When he opened it, his blood turned cold. The message contained a star map. It showed a location far beyond the galaxy's edge, in the dark space where no ships ever traveled. And at that location was a symbol that Ho recognized from his studies of ancient human text. The Hollow King. Under the map was a message. It is not dead. It is sleeping. And it is waking. It remembers. Ho stared at the screen for a long time. The Hollow King was supposed to be dead. Humanity had killed it 4,000 years ago. The final battle, the silence, the war that had cost half of Earth's population. But what if they had been wrong? What if the creature had only been wounded? Ho called an emergency meeting with Tae and Yuna. They gathered in a secure room, away from any recording devices. This could be false, Yuna said, studying the map. Someone trying to scare us. Or it could be true, Ho replied. Our ancestors did not have advanced weapons. They had spears and fire and primitive explosives. Maybe that was enough to hurt it, but not enough to kill it. Tae leaned back in his chair. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. If this is real, he said slowly, then we have a bigger problem than angry alien religions. If this is real, Ho said, then the galaxy has about one chance to survive. And they need us. Yuna laughed bitterly. Half the galaxy wants us dead. The other half wants us expelled. And you think they will ask for our help? They will not have a choice, Ho said. When that thing wakes up, it will come for everyone. Not just humans. Everyone. And we are the only species who has ever beaten one of these things. The three of them sat in silence, processing the weight of what they were facing. Outside, the galaxy continued to fracture. Protests on 100 worlds. Fleets moving into defensive positions. Religious leaders calling for holy wars. Political alliances crumbling. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, something ancient was stirring. Tae finally spoke. We need to prepare. Quietly. We need to find eyes who will stand with us. We need to gather every piece of information about the shepherds that we can find. And if the galaxy will not listen? Yuna asked. Tae looked at her with eyes that had seen too much in the past few days. Then we do what humans have always done, he said. We survive. We fight. And we win. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the distant lights of alien ships, watching Earth's solar system like predators circling prey. Our ancestors killed gods with rocks and fire, Tae said quietly. If we have to do it again, we will. But this time, we will not be alone. He turned back to Ho and Yuna. Start making plans. Reach out to our allies. And find out everything you can about the Hollow King. The three of them nodded and got to work. They had survived one impossible war. Now they were preparing for another, and somewhere in the dark space beyond the galaxy, an ancient eye began to open. The Hollow King woke on a cold morning. The first sign was a research station on the edge of the galaxy. One moment, it was sending normal reports. The next moment, it was gone. Then another station disappeared. Then another. A trail of destruction moving inward, toward the heart of galactic civilization. Ships were sent to investigate. None returned. Then the images came. Grainy footage from dying vessels showed something massive moving through space. A being of shadow and light, larger than moons, older than stars. Its eyes burned with a fire that had been sleeping for 4,000 years, and it was hungry. Panic spread across the galaxy. Species that had been calling for humanity's destruction now sent desperate messages begging for help. Fleets that had been preparing to attack Earth turned and fled. Millions of refugees poured inward, away from the advancing darkness. Commander Brent stood before the council, his face grim. We cannot stop it, he reported. We have hit it with everything we have. Nothing works. Our weapons pass through it like water through air. Elder Tareem turned to Tae, who sat quietly in the hewn section. You killed these things before, Tareem said. There was no anger in his voice now. Only fear. Can you do it again? Tay stood slowly. The chamber was silent, every eye fixed on him. We can try, he said, but not alone. We will need everyone. The council voted within hours. Every species, even those who had called humans monsters, agreed to join the fight. There was no other choice. Tay addressed the galaxy one final time before the battle. You asked us what we are, he said, his voice broadcast to every world, every ship, every being. We are survivors. We do not worship power. We challenge it. We do not accept tyranny. We burn it down. Your gods demanded your submission. We demanded their extinction. He extended his hand toward the screen. Fight with us or flee. But we will not kneel. The coalition formed within days. Ships from 400 species gathered at the rally point. It was the largest fleet in galactic history. Commander Bran led the combined forces, with human advisors at his side. Una coordinated the ground support. She had studied the ancient battles and knew where the shepherds were vulnerable. She taught alien soldiers techniques that human tribes had developed thousands of years ago. How to use fire. How to use sound. How to use their own weapons against them. Hannah established communications between species that had never worked together before. Languages that had never been translated. Cultures that had been enemies for generations. All united against a common threat. And General Ho volunteered to lead the forward strike. He was old. His body was failing. But he had spent his whole life studying this enemy. I will not live to see the end of this war, he told Tay before departing. But I can make sure it ends in our favor. Tay gripped his hand. Thank you, General. Ho smiled. Thank our ancestors. They showed us that gods can bleed. The battle began at the edge of a dead star system. The Hollow King came like a storm of darkness, destroying everything in its path. Ships exploded. Planets cracked. Stars flickered. But the fleet held. General Ho led the first wave, drawing the creature's attention while other ships moved into position. His ship was destroyed within minutes, but not before he had delivered a critical strike. A weapon designed from ancient human texts, filled with the same metals that had hurt the shepherds thousands of years ago. The Hollow King screamed. It was the first time any of them had heard it make a sound. The scream echoed across space, filled with rage and pain and something that might have been fear. The fleet pressed forward. More ships fell. More lives were lost. But Una's tactics worked. They attacked the creature from all angles, using fire and sound and the dark metals that humans had discovered long ago. Hana coordinated the final push. All ships converge on the central mass. Fire everything. The Hollow King tried to flee. For the first time in its eternal existence, it was afraid. But the fleet surrounded it. There was nowhere to go. Una stood on the bridge of the command ship, her hand hovering over the firing controls. The weapon before her was built from technology recovered from Earth's ancient ruins. The same technology that had killed shepherds before. She thought about General Ho, who had sacrificed himself to create this opening. She thought about her ancestors, who had faced these monsters with nothing but courage and determination. She pressed the button. The weapon fired a beam of pure darkness into the heart of the Hollow King. The creature convulsed. Its light flickered. Its massive form began to crack and break apart. And then, with a final scream that echoed across the galaxy, it died. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly cheers began to spread. From ship to ship. From species to species. Beings who had worshipped the shepherds for millennia now celebrated their destruction. The impossible had happened again. Humanity had killed a god. Tay stood before the council one last time, the victory still fresh. The delegates looked at him differently now, not with fear or hatred, with something new, respect. wonder, hope. We do not ask to be worshipped, Tay said. We only ask to stand beside you. Not as gods, not as monsters, just as what we have always been. Hana translated his final words for the assembly, survivors. The council rose from their seats, not in prayer, as they had risen for the shepherds, but in acknowledgement, in acceptance. Humanity had joined the galaxy not as children of the gods, but as the ones who had ended them. And the galaxy, finally, began to understand. Some species were not meant to kneel. As Tay left the chamber, Yuna walked beside him. She was tired. They all were. But there was a small smile on her face. What happens now? She asked. Tay looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that was now their home. We build, he said. We heal. We remember those we lost. He paused, thinking of General Ho, of all the humans who had died in this war and in the wars before, and we make sure that no one ever has to kneel again. Together, they walk toward the future, leaving the age of gods behind.